Many of you have seen the data that I'm going to open up here with, and it's a map of obesity rates in the U.S. that's been compiled from the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, and that's a survey which is periodically given out with the census. So you see the colors here changing on this map to indicate an increase in the obesity rates, the legend down here indicating the percent in the states. And as we start to drift towards orange in the time series over the 5 years that I'm showing you here, you start to see that we start to get a lot more obese people in our country, specifically down here in the southern states region, which is grossing up around 30% of the population being obese. It's a big problem. It's a problem that affects a lot of people. Over a third of people who are older than 20 years old in the U.S. have this obesity problem. And it's affecting children too. The youngest of children, 6 to 11 years old, 20% of which are obese, is projected by the CDC. It's intuitive to us, though, that diet and health are related. I mean, we learned growing up that those are two things that are really related. But I hadn't really looked into this problem specifically to see how some of the trends in our nation kind of line up. So what I thought I would do in the midst of all this data in a popular topic is try and encapsulate some of it for you and let you make some of your own decisions. It's really just kind of an ad hoc look at some of the data that's out there. I try to use good credible sources like the CDC as well as the Mayo Clinic, and I'll get to some of those sources as we go on. I wanted to encapsulate it in 3 things, basically just tell you what obesity is, because I didn't have in my mind a clear definition of what it was, some of the data, and I'd like to use long-term trend data to kind of express this information to you. And what can we infer from that? What can we take away? Obesity is basically a ratio. It's a ratio of your height in meters to your body weight. And, well, your body weight in height in meters squared. If you look down here at the bottom here, the obesity, basically that number generates a BMI, which if it's greater than 30, that means that you're in the category of being clinically obese. Down here at the bottom, notice these are some examples taken from the CDC.gov. If you're 174 pounds at 5'4", that's considered obese. One thing I didn't know until I delved in this data is when I first got here to NPS, I was in this category. I was 6'1", 235 pounds with a BMI of 31. And I was obese getting here. When I came to Toastmasters, I started to lose a lot of weight and lost 25 pounds. Toastmasters, which was very effective. But little did I know that I was at the risk here for a lot of health complications, type 2 diabetes, and a whole litany of maladies that affect, right now, a third of the population who are more than 20 years old. So if we look at the data, what do we know? What can we infer from the data that's out there right now from sources like the CDC? Well, this is time series data on the increase of the percent of the obese population in the U.S. And just pay particular attention to this kind of demarcation point of 1976 to 1980. We're getting bigger, but as in general, we're tending to eat more as well. If you look at this bottom line, again, in between 1970 and 1980, that's the projected calorie consumption increase of the population. As we're eating more, essentially. You see we go from around 22 to 2,700 calories. The serving size of large servings are getting a lot greater in the United States. Again, kind of between 1975 and 1980, increasing in that area. And we're sleeping less. Unfortunately, this time series data doesn't back all the way up to 1975, but in general, from 1985 to 2006, the number of people who are reporting less sleep is growing. To encapsulate this to you, not to get too technical, the less sleep we have, it inhibits an ability of our system to release hormones which are proven to regulate our body weight more effectively than if we were able to sleep otherwise. So think about that as we move on. And additionally, we're less active. The jobs that are associated with more physical activity are fewer in the United States as those that have light and sedentary activity, increasing from the year 1960 on to roughly present. So we have that data, and we see how these trends kind of line up. Well, what do we do about it? Well, it's clear that there are a few things that we need to pay attention to, our caloric intake being one of them. It's not necessarily as simple as the amount of calories we're eating based upon an average. There are many BMI or basal metabolic rate calculators that are out there for us to kind of look at. And that's one of the things that I really had to pay attention to, was how many calories was I actually burning. I had to really adjust that because it wasn't in line with what the national average was. I had to look and find out that my body type, I burned a lot less calories than what was actually happening out there. So get enough sleep. And the amount of sleep that you get on this range is 7 to 9 hours a night. But that depends on what your quality of sleep is and also how much sleep you've lost in the last few days. So I had to look at that a lot. I was staying up a whole night trying to do homework instead of actually studying. I found that was having a detrimental effect not only on my weight, but also on my studies as well. And get active. 30 minutes, 5 days a week of walking, etc. Some type of exercise to increase your activity throughout the week also is going to contribute to getting fit. And really, it's just being an advocate of those things. I know obesity doesn't affect a lot of people. It affected me, but it's affecting a larger portion in the United States. When I say not a lot of people, not a lot of people that we run into maybe in a day, but it's going to get greater, and the problem is projected to grow. And I would expect to see, if you haven't heard in recent times, the legislation to try and control food products which contribute to obesity. So it's something to think about. I'm not for the government stepping in to tell you what you should eat, but I am for us educating ourselves on what things maybe contribute to the problem and what can we do to try and try and add and be leaders in society to continue and keep this topic in our forefront and shape it as we are leaders in society. The main sources that I used were the CDC.gov, the USDA, the Mayo Clinic, the University of Chicago Hospital website, and as well as the sleep journals. Thank you.